Hi everyone, Aimer again with another Mission Impossible episode review. This time I'm doing Season 3, Episode 5, which is called The Execution. So here we see Jim getting his instructions from a second-hand store where he finds an old tape recorder. The mission is to take down Louis Parma, who is taking over the food distribution industry through underhanded means and is poised to do more damage to the economy, so we're told. Again, this time we get a dossier scene, but it's different this time. Jim is basically just looking at the pictures of the team on a table already selected, and we have the addition of a Dr. Henry Loomis. The team discusses that they will have to disorient their target, whoever that will be, they don't know yet, and Parma has always been able to get his people out of trouble so that they don't talk, so the task will be difficult and unpredictable. We cut to Parma and his right-hand man, Al Ross, who discuss muscling in on the produce business of a man who recently passed away. Turns out that Jim is the new owner, and Al shows up there with one of his men asking to talk business. The business, of course, is Parma's protection racket, and Jim turns down their offer, causing Al to start trashing his warehouse while the other hood holds him at gunpoint. Jim goes into Parma's office and smacks him, demanding $1,800 in restitution, which he literally takes out of Parma's pocket. When Al returns, Parma tells him he wants Jim dead. The rest of the IMF is preparing stuff in a warehouse with Barney and Rollin taking a break so that they can tap into Parma's phone. They overhear that the job's been given to Victor Duchel, one of Parma's top hitmen. Rollin watches Duchel's apartment building and tells the others that Duchel bought a bunch of items for the job, which Barney realizes after some thinking is to create a rifle grenade. Jim and Cinnamon set themselves up in an apartment as the Morgans. Barney uses a projector to set up an image from inside the bedroom at the window. Duchel waits outside the apartment for Jim to come home to her, while the other IMF members stationed outside. Vic takes his shot and is immediately cornered by police officers Barney and Rollin and choked out by Willie, unconscious. Vic wakes up in unfamiliar surroundings, realizing he's in a prison cell with half-eaten food and a recently lit cigarette. He sees Barney as a guard nearby and Rollin as a prisoner in another cell. Vic asks what's going on, and Barney says he's sick of the routine of faking amnesia. Vic has brief flashbacks, seeing Rollin and Barney as the cops he thought he saw. Parma gets Ross to find out why nothing's in the news about the Morgans being killed, even though the evidence of the explosion is present at their apartment, and why Vic is AWOL. The IMF discovers that Vic has been through lengthy jail stays before, almost to the point of being on death row, but Parma has always managed to get him out. Vic discovers that the year is now 1971, according to what's in his jail cell, rather than the 1968 he previously remembered. Guard Willie arrives with Dr. Loomis to prepare Rollin for a scheduled execution at 10 a.m., with Vic watching intently. Rollin starts angrily ranting at Vic, saying he should go first, as he's a hired killer, whereas he murdered his wife in a fit of rage. The death of the Morgans is in the late newspaper edition, as well as the fact that Vic has not been seen. Cinnamon arrives as Vic's lawyer, triggering another flashback. He still protests he doesn't remember anything, and Cinnamon says she's heard it all so many times since she was appointed to defend him more than 2 years ago. And Vic is concerned that she was appointed, why didn't Parma get him a lawyer? Vic demands that she gets Parma, but she shows him that Parma has ditched him, testified that he doesn't even know who Vic is, and he has no chance to avoid his execution today at 11 a.m. unless he decides to change his mind and take the governor's offer to testify against Parma for clemency. Willie returns with Dr. Loomis and prison warden Jim to take Rollin to the adjacent gas chamber, as Vic repeats his demand to Cinnamon to find Parma right away. Rollin is bawling uncontrollably as he's taken inside, increasing Vic's anxiety as he watches Rollin get strapped into the chair and then taken away on a gurney. Rollin, as Vic, calls Parma and asks him and Al to come to the warehouse. It's important. Cinnamon returns to Vic's cell, saying she's spoken to Parma, and just as always, he denies knowing Vic at all. Vic is still incredulous and won't turn on Parma despite Cinnamon's protest to save his life. Vic watches as the chamber is prepared and the clock continues to tick down. It's now 11 a.m. Warden Jim gives Vic his last chance to talk, which he again turns down. He fights Barney and Willie, but is strapped into the chair and set up. Parma and Ross arrive, and Jim motions to the guards to fill the chamber. The IMF continue to watch Duchel to see if he'll give up, but he doesn't, even as the cyanide is lowered into the water. At the last moment, Vic finally agrees to talk, and Barney activates the tape recorder. Parma and Ross arrive inside the warehouse, hearing Vic confess to all his murders for hire over a speaker, as Parma vainly tries to shoot Vic through the bulletproof glass, and shortly finds himself cornered by the IMF shotguns. Mission accomplished. I'm going to give this episode a grade of B. I know that that's going to be a little bit controversial to a lot of people. I've seen and heard and read where there's a certain subset of the fandom who thinks that this is one of the greatest episodes of all time. If you enjoyed it and you liked it, that's fantastic. My personal take on it is I don't quite share that opinion. It is a very good episode. It's well constructed. It tells a really, really good story. I will absolutely not deny that. It has a lot of very good things about it, things that I've mentioned before. Certainly the power of 5 is on display in this episode. Everybody's got a task. Everybody is involved in the mission. Everybody's important to the mission to make it all come together. It is a difficult mission, right? There's nothing easy about this, and it goes right down to the last second, and that makes sense in this particular case, right? The writers made a very, very cogent story as far as that goes, in terms of making it so that it makes absolute sense that we've got a guy who is willing to, take a whole lot of risks that I don't think a normal human being would take, because he has a history of being brought out of the kind of situation that he's facing. So from that point of view, yeah, that's really, really good. Luke Askew's performance as Duchel is outstanding. Can't say enough about Martin Landau's acting in this episode. It also absolutely great. Why I give it the grade that I do of a B. First of all, the pace is a little slower than I would like. That is necessary. I admit it. It has to be. There's some necessary padding. There has to be to create suspense. It's relevant to the plot. I understand that. So I'm just putting it in the, for me, not so good category. It's necessary to the plot. I totally get that. I think what really does it for me, that I would not give this episode an A or anything higher than a B myself, is a couple of things. One of them is kind of a small thing, in that, actually, I would say that the two are related. Let me talk about the bigger thing first. From what I've read in the Mission Impossible dossier, and it certainly comes across, as you get into this episode, certainly, by the time, we get to the death row part of the episode, it's very, very clear that the writers are trying to make a social or political point about how they feel about the death penalty. I'm not going to talk about that. There's no point talking about it. Everybody has an opinion about it. And the writers can try and make whatever socio-political point they wish. I don't begrudge them that. But I definitely feel that was kind of the overarching thing that they wanted to accomplish. I wouldn't say that they necessarily sacrificed the quality of the story or the production to achieve that goal, but I do feel, I can't put my finger on it, but something is just kind of lacking a little bit for me. There's this whole idea of anviliciousness, which if you want to look up on tvtropes.org, you can, about how, exactly what I'm talking about here, where the writers are trying to make that point, above and beyond, and just kind of like hammer you're the anvil, and I'm going to hammer this point over and over again about how we feel about a certain issue. That seems to me what's going on here. Kind of related to that, a microcosm of that. Again, I don't know whether this is deliberate or how it came about. The whole framing device of this is, we're talking about Louis Parma, the character, played by Vincent Gardenia here. He's trying to take over the food distribution sector. It's not even really explicitly said that he's a mobster or anything like that. He almost looks like a businessman, a corrupt businessman, for lack of a better way of going about it. Like, that's your framing device? Like, that's really like supposed to be something that's supposed to engage us and get us interested in the story? I think they could have come up with something better as kind of a framing device about why is the IMF getting involved in this. Again, they have to kind of trump that up and say, well, if Parma is successful, then he's going to move into other industries and it's going to disrupt our economy and that sort of thing. That to me is a hallmark of an excuse plot. And that's one of the things that I noticed, a major thing to me, that I think proves the point that this was more about making that socio-political point rather than telling a good story. Not that they didn't tell a good story. They did tell a good story, but the Anviliciousness of it bothers me, and that's why I can only give this one a B. Another thing that occurred to me is that brings this episode down a notch. I made a note and I missed it the first time. Why does Parma not have any security in his office, other than Al, who's not always around? When Jim comes to Parma's office as a secretary outside, but Jim is just able to march in, slap Parma, who clearly, because of the way he does business, has other enemies. And Jim is able to take money literally out of his pocket. If Parma is at the level of, being a corrupt businessman that he says he is, for him to not have any security at all, that's just glaringly stupid, and another kind of blotch against the plot of this episode. That's I didn't like that one bit. So that's my take on that. Thank you all for watching. As always, please like this video, please subscribe to my channel, and please leave your comments. If you disagree, I would love to hear what you have to say. I know there are people who probably feel very, very strongly about what's presented in this episode, and I welcome the feedback. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.